where I should be right now, and I don't know why I'm here.
That's where it looks like you are right
Oh,
now.
well, yeah, I figured, at least I was going to make you comfortable. If I had shown you, I'm in like suburbia in Toronto. I don't think you would have enjoyed it. There are little kids out here playing in plastic pools in our backyard.
Um,
Look, hang on, somebody's calling, and I don't want to hear from them. Excuse me. All right, see, you need to turn everything off, right?
yeah,
That's
I
how it
turned
works.
mine off.
I should have done that. I was more absorbed with the kids in the backyard. They were goofing around. I said, no, shh. No, you don't do that to a 2-year-old. They don't like it.
It doesn't really work.
No, no, yeah. Well, yeah, so for you, right? Anyway. So we're sitting in the jungle right now. And welcome to the jungle from, who is that? Welcome to Guns N'
It's
Roses?
Guns N' Roses, yeah,
Guns N' Roses. Okay, well,
totally.
welcome to the jungle. So we started off. You were telling me that you spent what, like an hour this morning putting a praying mantis. I thought that was really cool.
Okay, well,
Well, let's kind of put walls around this conversation. I mean, you
yeah,
observe the praying mantis. I'm watching children ready to kill them out in the backyard. There is, it's discordant, if you get my point. So tell
yeah.
me about the praying mantis in Costa Rica.
Well, my son is a insect amphibian reptile guy, and he's not here right now. And we had a praying mantis come into our house last night, which I have to say, if you've never been around one, anybody who knows me, who's seen me on Facebook, knows that I love. I post pictures of bugs pretty often. I'm pretty
Okay.
enamored by them.
You're,
And
you're an
we have
entomologist?
no, but they're fantastic. I mean, there are some really fantastic, amazing things here. I mean, the colors of the caterpillars and the spikes coming off of them. And I mean, it's incredible. And the color, like these iridescent glitter bugs. And
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, praying mantises have always been sort of one of those things that's like, I can't think of something that's not a bug that has the same thing, but it's like that, sort of like that. I'm enamored by them and I'm freaked out by them at the same time. Like they look at you and they creep me out, but I think they're amazing. So anyway, my dog got a hold of it last night.
Oh, no.
So I had to rescue her, which my husband informed me they're all females because the females eat the males.
Well, that sounds like normal society. I can see that being the case.
But anyway, I took her outside, and I went outside, and she was there this morning, and so we had a moment. I've been sending her healing energy,
Oh,
and
so nice.
I hope she recovers. She's doing okay, but she doesn't look like great. She's
Okay.
anyway. So I took some cool video and pictures of her that I'll post later. But
Well, that's so
yeah, that's
interesting. Was it you have like a non-denominational egalitarian home, so the praying mantis was fine coming?
oh well. And if you so we moved to Costa Rica 2 years ago.
Right.
And the thing here is most, like I have AC in this room, but most houses don't have AC. And if you do have AC, it's only in certain rooms. So we have them in our bedrooms because we don't want too much moisture in there because it's pretty humid.
Yeah.
But everything else is open.
Right.
So we have.
Are you yelling at the kids on the outside who are playing in plastic pools and making a lot of noise?
No.
Okay. Well, I should be moving to suburbia. I'm getting too old to be tolerant of children. So here's the thing. I did all the research on you, and this has been the weekend from hell for me. I still try to put threads together. Everybody that I spoke to they were atraditional journeys. Their careers, their journey through life has just been exceptionally atraditional. Just discordant. They were all strayed way outside their lanes and then ended up in those lanes. And you're really no different in the sense that I said it to you before we started talking. I guess somebody's saying, well, she's in Costa Rica playing with crystals, just, looking at praying mantises and, their bells ringing and whatnot. But you are a graduate, or at least not only that, you are a faculty member of Spear and Pankey. You went to Piper, which we'll talk about the TMD in a minute. And also, I like Piper because he's got a great mustache.
Oh,
right?
yeah, he does.
He's got a great, the whole Snidely Whiplash thing going on.
I have a favorite story about Piper I might tell if it
Okay.
comes up.
So we'll throw in Peter Dawson into that mix. So, you
Yeah.
hit the four horsemen of the apocalypse, Pankey, Dawson, Spear, and Piper. So that's pretty serious stuff.
It is.
So tell me about Piper, because I love the mustache. Nothing else. I don't know anything else about him, just the mustache.
It's a quick story. super serious,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? And so, or at least he used to be. This was many, many years ago. But my first course I took from him was at a hotel, and I think it was related to the Dawson Center somehow. Like maybe it was right after a Dawson course or something. Anyway, it was a room full of people, and the first thing he told us was to turn off our cell phones. You know, very serious face, very. Yeah, his mustache is amazing. He almost looks like he came out of the wild. Like I don't know what the years are when the Wild Wild West was, but he almost
1800. So he looks like Sam Elliott, right?
yeah, like that.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, but very serious. He said, turn off your cell phones. If your cell phone goes off, you're going to be asked to leave.
Whoa.
Like that. And so everybody, you know, gets their cell phone out, turns their cell phone off, and I don't know, it was 3 minutes later, the cell phone rings in the back of the room. And he's like, you know, all serious and everything. And his secretary raises up his cell phone. It's the one that went off. So it lightened the whole, you know, thing. But I just thought
did he have to leave?
He was busted. No, he didn't have to leave. We had all paid. We wouldn't let him. But anyway, I just thought that was real. I mean, it's so funny.
Well, you know, we've spoken before, and what I find amazing is that, you know, in each case, Jessica yesterday couldn't stop laughing. She just like is full of life. Bethany the day before is full of life, and you're no different. So I think it's interesting that you commented on him being so serious. I think that was sort of typical of all those guys, Dawson, Panky, Spear. They were funny to a point, but it was kind of like, you know, you just knew that these guys were tight, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was quite serious. I mean, the reason you could sort of, I mean, if I really told you about my full-on journey.
Well, that's why we're here. Go for it.
Yeah, I grew up. I mean, I don't even want to start with my childhood, but I'm just going to tell a little bit. Had some pretty traumatic experiences as a kid, and became which I know a lot of dentists can relate. And I heard you sort of reference it with Jessica yesterday. Didn't hear you maybe use the word perfectionism, but I've heard it. You know, that's a part of I think what draws people to dentistry. But my need to prove myself was in full force, starting at a very young age, needing to prove myself to myself and needing to prove myself to others. And how that showed up is competency. You know, I'm going to show you how good I am, how great I am at anything that I do.
What was the source? You just...
you know, I'll just quickly say that, I had a fairly unstable, really young childhood. And then at 10, I found out I was adopted.
Okay.
And I already had what I would call a shaky foundation for my self-esteem and my feeling of belonging and safety in my household. And then at 11, I'll say this, and I can make light of it, but it's not really light. At 11, I found out I was ugly, is how I would say it.
You beg your pardon?
So at 11, I went to the orthodontist thinking that I was just going to be told I needed braces.
Right.
And when I came back for the consult and we sat in the room, and this is totally related to my journey in dentistry, so it's relevant. I sat in the room and watched the orthodontist put these huge slides of me on the wall and point out my you know, I had overgrown, my maxilla was too long, you know, too far forward and too long. My lower jaw, dolichocephalic, right?
Yeah.
Long face, right? Gummy smile, open bite. You know, he pointed out all these discrepancies from every angle.
Right.
And I had no idea. And so I was already quite insecure. And finding this out, it was almost like, oh gosh, now I'm exposed. Right. Now, not only am I insecure on the inside, but people are going to see that there's something wrong with me on the outside. So there was this feeling, I'd say I had a dad who was the not good enough dad, and the mom who was constantly pointing out, and to me it was personal that there was something wrong with me. That's how it lived for me. There's right. something wrong with me. So when something came at me that could be taken non-personally, to me it was a personal attack on my, me.
Your self-esteem.
Self-esteem. So yeah, there was this core belief that there's something wrong with me. So my life was about proving that is not true. So that's where
yeah, no, I'm sorry, I interrupted. I'm just thinking,
no, that's okay.
I'm looking at the people that you're doing and what you do with them. Be well, do well, live well. How many of the people that come to your courses, Allison, come with similar stories?
I actually, it's a human story. It doesn't always look exactly the same how it happens or
Oh,
what the message is, right? I think, not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I'm unworthy. I'm unlovable. I'm unwanted. That core first, what I would call wounding,
right,
that happens is it lives beneath the surface and it creates a reality for us. It creates almost like glasses that we see the world through,
right.
because we think it's true. And I have to tell you, I'd say about a year ago, maybe a little longer, there was a moment. There was a literal moment. I mean, I remember where I was. I remember what was going on. I was in the other room, and I had a moment where I realized I made that up. And it was the most powerful moment to realize that I made that up, that there's something wrong with me.
You made in your head.
I made it up.
It was an
We
illusion.
all did. We all made those things up. So that's sort of the core of my work. When I say be well, it's this realization that at our core, we are well. At our core, we are whole. At our
Right.
core, we are absolutely free. We're amazing. And what we do is we starting at a young age, we hear things, we learn things, we take on things, we say yes to things. That's how I like to describe it. Little yeses like, oh yes, there's, my mom doesn't love me. I'm not safe in the world. I'm as we get a little bit older, usually it's something to do with our appearance when we get into school, or being
Sure.
stupid or, but we take on these little things and we say yes to them. And then they become, for us, what we think is true, but in actuality, we made them up. It was a story that we made up based on the events in the moment that
Right.
we were experiencing.
Well, but Jessica said something yesterday that really caught my attention, above and beyond what she was dealing with in terms of her own parental situation. She had a cousin who at 15 committed suicide because she'd been bullied. And, like what a horror show it is today with the internet, people being bullied and this, that, and the other. It's tragic. So what the take home here for me is dentists who are driven basically at their core, that seems to me for a lot, that seems to be the rationale for why you would go into such a profession. I know everybody says, yeah, it's lucrative, you'll make a ton of money, and this, and you can set your own hours, and blah, 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 blah. But you're still going to be dealing with patients all day long. And not like a doctor who sticks an os stick
Tongue depressor.
and, smile, and, that's easy, right? They write a prescription, and I'm not diminished, don't get me wrong, but it's like, you write a prescription.
Dentistry is
Dentistry is
difficult
serious
work.
stuff. Now you're getting inside somebody's face in the
Right.
literal sense of the word. And I mean, if you think about it, our mouths are probably one of the most sensitive areas of all, and also got all kinds of psychological implications. So, but interestingly enough, if these are the people that choose to go into dentistry, is it because, do you think, given what you've been doing for, well, good Lord, it goes back quite some time, 2000, so almost 15 years, right? That's pretty much when this all started for you. Do the people that you talk to tell you the same story? Again, with modification, but that they had issues with self-esteem, but they saw dentistry as being something that could be altered, that, by being perfectionist, by achievement, by being driven, that they could negate a lot of these personal feelings? Is that something that shows up?
I definitely see the common thread of, and I actually have non-dental patients too, clients too.
Okay.
So the common thread is there are ideas about ourselves in the world that are hidden from us.
Okay.
And usually there are a few core ones, but I definitely think I think dentistry has, I do think it has a propensity to attract the ones who have something along the line. I mean, it's the not good enough, or there's something wrong with me. And then our outer experience reflects that back to us, which dental school is a perfect, did we attract dental school to us, or is it reflecting back to us? Somebody asked me one time how traumatic dental school was to me. And I was like, you know what? It wasn't for me. You know why? Because that was my growing up. To me, it felt absolutely normal to be shamed, or even if they weren't shaming me, but to be able to be told constantly that what you're doing is not good enough.
Wait, but dental school is a 15th century torture chamber. Let's be perfectly honest. To me, it was like that way. I mean, the only thing they're missing are like the cages that they used to put people in, right? The Iron Maidens and whatnot. No, but I mean, it's not an unrealistic consideration, and I've thought about it certainly in the course of all of these interviews. A lot of them said they went to dental school here, they did their graduate work, but nobody actually came out and said that dental school was this, that, or the other, because it was very hard. In some cases, people were open about their psyche and past and things that, put them in a place. But it was only since this deconstructed thing started that, and especially talking to people who are helping others, dentists in particular, that this sublayer, this sub-basement of damaged psyche is suddenly coming to the fore. And I mean, I don't think it's an outlier by any stretch of the imagination.
I don't think it is. I think this is super interesting, though. I thought of this yesterday when I was doing the dishes. I was going to talk about it, and since you're sort of going this direction,
I'm not doing the dishes, though. Forget that noise.
No, I don't like doing the dishes. But, sometimes when we shut off our mind, things pop in, right? So yesterday, I was thinking about an interview I did with Cliff Katz. You know Cliff Katz?
No.
Cliff Katz is I believe, a psychologist, but he's also a dentist. And he was one of the guys, I believe, and if he didn't do the research, he researched the research. Back in the 80s, he was involved or researched the research that had to do with dentists having the highest suicide rate.
Right.
And he said that they found it wasn't actually just dentists, it was all professionals. And I said, isn't that interesting? And what I came up with, I don't know if I talked about it with Cliff on that day, but my belief is that there are particular personalities and or behavioral patterns that start at whatever age that drive people to become professionals. And then a lot of those people that are driven to become professionals are driven to become even like, there are dentists that just are happy practicing dentistry. Right. And then there are dentists who are like me, or I think like you and many of the people that you interview, who it's not enough to be just, a dentist. I've got to go do this and go to these courses and become in faculty. And and so when he talked about the highest suicide rate being professionals, I thought, I think it's that every time we aim for the next thing, every time we go for the next thing, thinking we're going to have a different experience when we get there, like we're going to get there and we're going to feel better about ourselves. And finally, that's going to be the thing that's going to make me, it's like the dentist who gets 12 different certifications, or the dentist who becomes a lawyer, who becomes a physician, who, like every time we go for another thing, we think that's going to be the thing that finally makes us feel
it fixes it good
enough.
Yeah.
And every time we get there and it's not, because that was my experience, really.
Right.
But every time we get to that next thing and it's not, it's that much more of a letdown and depressing, and almost like oh gosh, it's really something to do with me. We're back sort of to pointing the finger at ourselves. Well, if that didn't do it, what's wrong with me? That guy seems happy over there. A little bit like what Jessica talked about too.
So how do you flip the switch on this? It's interesting because what manifests in many cases is this almost overblown ego. But the bigger the ego, the foundational aspect of what's creating the ego is usually crumbling concrete. I'm not suggesting that this is, there's no such thing as a blanket statement, But it's interesting because it is so, like you said, it's so typical. We're endlessly striving. We always want to be able
Mhm.
to do more. And I just find it interesting because you said, I mean, I appreciate the compliment, but for me, this has been living vicariously. I get to listen to all these people who did amazing things in their lives, and whatever I did is fine. But it's the quest that's really
It's the
kind of
quest.
the quest is just kicking butt. You know, it's like holy cow. How many hours a day do you work? You know, are you sleeping 2 hours a day? And interestingly enough, I've had a couple of people, one who I'm going to interview, who said to me, he emailed me at some ridiculous time where he lives. I said, dude, why aren't you sleeping? You know, what's going on? He says, I only sleep 2 or 3 hours a night. And I'm going, okay. You know, like, you know, he's like in his 30s. He's sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night. So
Wow.
we are driven. We are driven. But so to get to the point of this, I'm not. This is not self-analysis. Um, I want to look at it in the sense of how many people that you see. Like you went to Panky, you went to Spear, you did all of these amazing things, and you were on faculty. It wasn't just like you took 12 million hours of CE in 20 years. You were on the faculty. You know, you get
Hmm.
out of Baylor in 1995, so that's what, 25 years ago. You go through this massive amount of CE, and you end up on faculty. You faculty at Spear, which is no small thing. Like Spear's very, very, you know, what's his name, Imtiaz, and all these guys
Yeah.
in Scottsdale. They're serious players. Like you don't just get to be on faculty; you got to pay your dues. I mean, that's
Right.
at least 5 years, right, before you even get close.
Visiting faculty, just by the way, right?
Oh,
There's
well,
resident faculty and there's
gee,
visiting
I'm
faculty.
not
Yes.
good enough. What else? Jesus.
I just want to make
Get
sure we.
working on it there, young lady. So
But yes, you're right. It takes a lot of work. I think what you're pointing to, because you asked it a second ago, um, the question of sort of like, what's the remedy? What's
yeah,
the right? What I think the remedy is this, and it's one of those things. When I say it, you're going to say "duh," and at the same time, the more I keep realizing it, the deeper I realize this goes. It's really not a duh. It's actually profound.
okay,
It's profound. Okay. So at the core of who we are, I said, was a well being, a
yeah,
well soul, a healthy, well, okay. From the time we're born, we're perfection, right? Then we create these ideas about ourselves and the world that have
okay,
us have then we that those ideas, those thoughts create a reality and an experience for us,
okay,
those ideas. So the world, you said something about inside out or outside in a minute ago. You were talking about
right,
the chase, the outside in. Most of us live, and this is the simple misunderstanding that I think is profound. Most of us live outside in.
right,
We live walking around, looking at what's going on out there, and we react to that through our filters that we're not aware of. And so something happens, we react to it. We think that it's all happening outside in, but actually there's that gap between what's happening out there and our
right.
response is like we get to choose in that moment how we respond, right?
Are people, sorry for interrupting, are people quick enough to do that at the moment, or does that require a tremendous amount of coaching and
It
nurturing?
takes work. It
Yeah,
takes work. It's a profound realization when you really get it, and then it's a journey to master it. And I don't know how many people actually master it, but what I'll say is the mastery comes in. So we have our conscious mind,
mhm,
which is fantastic. We can say we want something, and that's great. But we also have then our subconscious mind, which it has all these previous instructions that we've given it. And it has all those previous ideas that we gave it, all those lenses that we're looking through that
right,
we've
right.
programmed into ourselves. So it's being conscious in the moment, being mindful and conscious and present in the moment so you can make conscious choices. It's also really powerful to reprogram our subconscious mind, which takes quite a bit of effort. Um,
So,
and
I'm sorry, go ahead. Let
well,
me interrupt because of the thought. Let me add,
okay.
see if I can embellish it because I'm like, I'm learning. I'm a dentist, right? All of this stuff, like, to me is like, whoa, esoteric. So it's kind of like, if,
Yeah, and I don't want it to be too esoteric, so
no,
thank
no,
you.
no, no. I
Okay.
love it. I
Okay.
love it. This is, for
Okay,
me,
cool.
this is great because quite honestly, the problem with being in dental school or whatever, it was very procedural. Everything we did as dentists is sort of linear and procedural. And if you choose to think transactionally, you're lost, right? Like, you know, who are you, right? It's so my where I didn't want to interrupt you, but fear of failure is not something that we're born with.
No.
It's something that outside infuses us with.
Correct.
So the question is, in all of this scrambling to achieve, this tolerance of being in institutions which are rigid, inflexible, people have rules and regulations. There's no such thing as nuancing, embellishing, innovating. Most institutions strike down creativity unless you're following the materials and methods of your particular master's or PhD thesis. They're dry. You have certain things that you have to achieve. So I wonder where I was going with this in terms of what you were describing. How complicated is it for someone to pursue research, academia, being faculty members? Like, what was it like for you? This is where it was going. Here you are a free thinker, you're tuned to everything about what you do. You just struck me with the one George Harrison song on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, when he was playing the sitar and everybody thought he was nuts, was Within You, Without You. And if you actually listen to it, he was so infused in a very short time with the necessity to understand life in a particular aspect. So
Mm.
where this is going after this ridiculously long preamble is, you were involved. you were involved in all of these institutes, visiting faculty or whatever. But what was it like to, again, back to the imposter phenomenon, and which to me is fear of failure, right? It's one thing to think that I don't know how I got here. It's pure luck, and it's like the emperor has new clothes. They're all going to see I'm naked. But what was it like for you? You were talking, from what I see, like fear of failure. It's very hard to be well, and it's very hard to do well if you're going to get found out. Not necessarily as an imposter, but as incapable, even though you've been given these positions.
Yeah, you know what? In school settings, I think that there's certain places where I didn't have that experience, and school was one of them. I thrived in school. That was a place where I knew what was expected of me. I was competitive enough and driven enough that I would push myself to do whatever it took to thrive in that scenario. And I knew what it took, and I could make that happen. Was fear of failure underneath driving the boat? Probably.
Right.
Fear of not good enough, fear of, I need to prove something to somebody. All those things were driving the boat. Sort of, again, like it's a subconscious thing, right? It wasn't something that I thought that, looking from the outside, it's easy for people to say,
Right.
oh gosh, there was this greatest quote I heard not too long ago. Something about behind every successful person, not every successful person, behind like most successful people is the fear of, what drives us to succeed is the fear of failure, or is the fear of not being enough, or is the fear of, most people are driven by that fear.
Right.
And that is, I can relate to that, but I didn't have the experience of feeling like an imposter. What comes up for me is when I'm a faculty instructor or something, one of my biggest fears is public speaking. Even this, it's just something that makes me nervous, and I put myself in situations to do it, and I don't feel how it occurs to me is not as much of an imposter syndrome as it lives in a comparison. It lives in, some ideal that I've created of how I should be and how a faculty member should be and how I should be able to perform, present, whatever, that I should look like certain other people, like Frank Spear, who's my hero as far as teachers go. Like, I think he's one of the best educators on the planet.
Right.
So I have this ideal, I mean, there's fabulous presenters at Pinky, of how that should look, and the feeling of I'm not there yet. And that, because that needle keeps moving, there's you never get there. So the work is in me. The work is it's just to realize that I made the needle up.
Right.
I'm making that whole thing up, and then I'm comparing myself to a made up thing and making myself miserable.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, it does, and it's funny that it's interesting that we're going down several paths sort of simultaneously. And given that I have very limited brain power, I'm interrupting you because I'm trying to figure out that I'm not missing anything. One of the things that you're saying right now resonates very clearly with something else. When COVID hit, basically everything shut down, and probably will have to shut down again thanks to some serious mismanagement. But what I heard from people is that they were no longer able to go and lecture or travel, meet their friends, do this, that, and the other. And I was hearing numbers like, well, how often were you away from home? 150 days a year. I was taking planes, I was on 1,200 plane flights last year, right? And it's like I'm sitting here going, okay, that's cool. I think that's amazing that you're doing that, and you've got thousands of people that you're teaching and benefiting. And now they're going to step back, and they're going to be able to do it like this. But I still now hear similar things, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to be really careful here, because at some point in time, I'm sure somebody's going to come to the door with a bomb and just sort of put it in the house and blow me up because I'm being so insulting or whatever the hell it is. But they all at one point reacted in the sense that they were glad they were home and had a chance. What concerned me all down the line was that they had been so infused in this striving mentality that within you, without you was never a consideration. They were home, but so they just had more time at home, they could leave it. This isn't living well. I don't think. It really isn't living well. I think it was... who said it? I think it was Sally Safa who said it. We're human beings, not human doings.
Yeah.
And the whole point of doing this is that maybe it's okay to just rest on your laurels for a period of time. You're only as good as what you did yesterday is not something that we innately feel. It's something that gets oppressively put on us. Yeah. So in the course of, you deal with all kinds of people, that you work with, you coach, you try and get them going. How many people are okay to hit a plateau and just say, okay, that's cool, I'm here, that's wonderful, and let it go with that?
Most people are not, although I find that lives sometimes looking like burnout. Like the people who are think that's how it lives. But let me say something. This is what I think is phenomenal about what you're saying, because it brings up something that I really do want to share.
Sure.
This moment of slowing down,
right,
is an opportunity for dentists, for everybody to stop. So I think so often, and I have to speak for myself, when I created my vision for my practice, right, originally, and every goal and everything that I did in my dental practice. I mean, this has only been in the last 5 to 7 years that I really get this. And then it's just more and more I'm learning. I'm a student.
For life.
I'm a student for life. But my vision came very much from a lack place. Yes, I had a purpose. My vision, I wanted to change people's lives, and it came from my own, I mentioned my jaw.
Yeah.
and I had jaw surgery. I had braces twice. I had jaw surgery, and it did change my life.
Right.
It was an outside-in change.
Right.
And I went into dentistry to change lives, and I did that. I did those outside-in changes, and it was phenomenal. And somewhere along the way, I realized that inside out was just as powerful, if not more. And to me, I think it's
background.
Yeah, I saw that. I like
Let's
it.
go. Let's do it.
I love it.
We're on a roll.
I love it. So what I believe this, if people will slow down and really, to the best of their ability, get to that core of that core as much as we can, the core of who we are and our heart's desires. Like, given everything that's going on or not, like, what would I love? How would I love my life to be? What would I love to be doing? And really, Ken, it starts with, who do I want to be?
Yeah.
It's kind of like in a dental practice, a philosophy statement, but it's really, no matter what's going on around me. So no matter what life throws at me, if we have to lock down, if we don't have to lock down, if I have to wear all this crap, if I don't, whatever it is, right? How do I wish to show up? And that's a conscious decision that can come from the heart instead of from the egoic mind and the fears. If we're aware enough, and this is the work that I do with people, it can be difficult to do this on your own, but if you can really get to a place, if someone can really get themselves to that place where they're connected to their true heart, it's a feeling. There's a feeling that we have when we're in that space versus the feeling we have when we're striving, when we're creating a goal from a place of need or want or lack or, fear or something like that.
So I'm going to ask you a question, well, several actually, because we're going to talk about being more powerful and amazing than we think we are. And I think that's, if we could come to that recognition, then a lot of this drive, this strive, this thrive perspective that we're all running around trying to do will change. One of the things, again, you do enough of these, there are threads. I mean, you'd have to be kind of like not playing with a full deck, not just consistency. Was one of the things that was continually apparent that through me was the compartmentalization, the time cycles, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The time cycles. Well, I can see you at 4:30 next Thursday. And I'm sitting there going, what? Right? That's how restricted you are? Seriously? You can't just say, what the heck? Let's have a coffee. Let's go down and shoot the breeze for a couple of minutes. No, I can see you 10 days down the road at 2:30 in the afternoon. Dial it into one of these things that show up on your screen, like a calendar. You plug it in, you get these automatic robotic messages back. And I'm sitting there going, what? I mean, seriously. I understand work-life balance. I get it. So you can, you put things into a time slot. But it was this rigidity that this is how we work, right? Who could live like that? I mean, it's insane. You get up in the morning, you want to go stand out in the jungle, you want to look at your praying mantis. Well, does that happen to fit in your Sunday time cycle? I mean, seriously. It completely, I know I'm not an academic, I don't work in institutions, I would be the absolute worst person to do that. But it was kind of like, how can you function like, it's not a train schedule. You're not a subway in New York that has to show up every 2 minutes to move people around. You're a human being,
Yeah.
I mean, you're a human being. So I wondered I know a lot of these people were passionate, they wanted to get out and lecture, they wanted to do their thing. They had 12 million articles, they lectured 500 places, been in 97 countries. And I think it's amazing. It's incredible that not only do they have that energy, but they have the aptitudes to do this. But I didn't feel sorry for any of them. It was just, holy cow. If your kid came to you and said, Dad, Mom, I want to throw a football. It's the whole the Harry Chapin cats in the cradle routine, right? We perpetuate this myth of responsibilities. We have to do something. It has to fit in here. Have to get it done by such and such a time. Is this why dentists lose their passion, do you think?
It's so interesting. I'm going to try to answer that question, but right before that, I was already kind of going down a path of where I went with that was, Um, the most important thing is to figure out what is driving the bus.
Mm-hmm.
What is driving you? What is having you get on a plane every so and so, what is having you fill your schedule? What is having you avoid your children? What is having you strive and strive and strive and strive? And if you keep going in, you will find it. And it is usually what we've talked about. It's some idea of yourself. I had it.
Right.
I've discovered mine. It doesn't mean it's still not active in some places, right? But I've seen it. Once you shine the light on it, it's like you start to see it's almost like facets of a diamond, where it plays out, all the places in your life where it has shown up. But
well, it's interesting. There is obviously a generation where even understanding the mindfulness, there's still people who go, meditate. Are you kidding? Meditate? Like, they kind of look at it like being mindful, being grounded. Seriously? What are you talking about? But we are creatures of stimulus and response, right?
yes.
Isn't that basically the essence of who we are? And again, I'm not trying to antagonize anybody, because everybody was amazing. There was a point in which I said, do you guys ever batch watch Netflix? Like, seriously. I'll sit till 5 a.m. watching every series on Guide, just because I like getting lost in other people's lives. And I realize they're getting together, but it's no different than the psychology of being a dentist. That's what we do. We get lost in people's lives. Granted, it's truncated. It's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, depending on who the consultant is that's trying to tell you how to maximize your productivity at any given moment in time. But we are batch watching lives every day. And that is the psychodynamics of being a dentist. What we choose to do avocationally or being linked to our vocation is fine. Some people like administration, some people lecture. But it's a question of, do we ever sit back for a minute and realize that not only are we watching other people's lives, but we're a psychologist for other people's lives. In that moment of time that we're with them, we are their alpha, their psychologist, whatever you want to call it. So how do we get our mindset into a place where that is not equally as important, but we understand or appreciate what we do above and beyond putting veneers on teeth, so that we don't burn out and we don't lose our passion? Is that possible?
Yeah. Well, and I want to come back to there's something I want to come back to, but
Sure.
Before I do, well, let's talk about patience. Talk about patience. Gosh, I love my favorite part of practice. I loved doing the dentistry and changing lives in that way, but I loved the new patient process.
Okay.
And what I loved about it was sitting with a human being and finding out sort of what their beliefs and their values and their ideas about their mouth was, and then being able to invite them to possibilities for themselves.
Okay.
So it was like a dance. They would sort of tell me what they believed and what they thought, and I would sort of share. And this is kind of what coaching is like too,
Yes.
Well, what about this possibility? Are you interested in this? And, and just this dance of sort of coming to this place where I help another human being see what's possible and choose what they can imagine is the highest possibility for themselves that they can, have, that they can choose. And so showing up for a patient like that is, if I'm getting off, let me know. But
No.
What I learned was that it took, sometimes I couldn't help it, but you do kind of have to not compartmentalize, but you're not thinking about the bills and the staff issues, anything else like that. You know, you don't bring things into the room as best as you can when you're sitting with this person. And one of the things I learned was I needed to be able to be with someone in their stuff and not judge them.
Right.
And I needed to be, you know, the emotional, there's emotions involved in all of this. There's a human being, much like me, sitting in the orthodontist room at 11 years old. That orthodontist could not have possibly known that he was speaking to a person who already felt very insecure, and that this would be something that would be a very life-changing, significant moment in my life. You know, for me, it was a significant in a negative way.
Right.
Now, did it all turn out to be positive? Yes, but he couldn't have possibly known. So I have this awareness when I'm in my room with my patients that I'm sitting in front of a human being who potentially has shame around their mouth or around the way they've cared for themselves and the decisions they've made, embarrassment, fear. And so you said something earlier about women being more in tune to something. What was it? You said guys are kind of just.
Jessica said something yesterday, which basically, I don't remember the exact words, but, you know, just to sort of bring it to a point of discussion, a large part of the interviews were with women dentists, and there was this, the discussions focused on empowerment, leadership, and the fact that, you know, glass ceilings are still not being broken, not with the frequency and the representation they deserve. But part of it, I think, is that I'm not suggesting that women don't strive. I mean, there are enough women see, you know, Sheryl Sandberg is, you know, Facebook, right? It's not like they don't, you know, achieve like excellence and whatnot, but they're not represented equally. And I think that there is still, like, those people are unique. But I still think there's enough perception that you're the caregiver, you know, you're the cook, the chef, the bottle washer, whatever. And that's not sexism and anti-feminism.
That's perfect. You said exactly what I wanted you to say. So
you mean I'm being manipulated?
No, I was like trying to remember because I thought this ties back to something he said. No, oh my gosh, I'm so bad at manipulation. No, it's perfect because what I was pointing to was that there's this idea, and I think it's true, that women are more in touch with their feelings and nurturing and all of that, and I wasn't. So I promise you, this has been so much effort and so much work. I have been told so many times I was a man in a woman's body. I was strive, get it done, feelings don't matter. You know, when my staff would come to me with family things, I'd be like, too bad, so sad, get back to work. You know, like I had zero compassion for anything other than, you know, this track that we were on to get to our vision. And I think that's part of the reason why I did get burned out. But I also had an awareness and started learning about emotional intelligence from my, you know, dear friend and mentor, Bob Frazier, and others, but that was one of the main teachings. And I started seeing that, and also I think it's, you know, my journey, there was something about my journey and being that little girl in that chair that I when I heard it, I got it. Like, you really need to learn to be present. It just took me a while to learn to be present and to get in touch with their emotions and be comfortable with their emotions and be comfortable with my own and be able to relate in that space because I had shut mine all down.
So you're visiting faculty at Pankey, at Spear. So how many other visiting faculty or these like full-time faculty are female?
Oh gosh. I think at Pankey right now, it seems to me when I teach, there are 2 men and 1 woman faculty members. So my guess would be maybe a third. I don't know if that's true though. And then I haven't taught at Spear in a while. But when you go through the program, there's certain levels. If you've taken his courses, which I had taken all his courses before they even started at Scottsdale, So I qualified to be a certain level of faculty already, but then you have to, if you wanted to teach the in-office course, I mean, the in-hand them. And so when I was mentored in the in-house live courses, I had one male faculty and one female faculty. And so I don't know if Spear's half. My guess is half, or it may be similar to Panky, where it's a third. It may be a third. It may be a third. 2/3 men, 1/3 women. But
it's interesting because again, I'm going to take 150 interviews and throw them out the window. That's it. So much for whatever career I have. There was an interesting observation. Many of the female clinicians that I spoke to were brilliant. I mean, extraordinary, just beyond words in terms of their clinical acumen, their business savvy, their academic background, the research that they did. And they were very much part of the guys. They were one of the guys, right?
Yeah.
And I think at a certain level, that's cool. But I think also at another level, there is the perception that women who are striving, okay, who are really driven, who seek to excel, unless they are incredibly self-effacing, okay, they're a threat to men. Now that's, again, okay, so that cracking sound you just heard is the end of my career, whatever it may very well be. I'll never do one of these things again. But I
think it can be I don't even want to say misunderstood. I think it can be, and I don't know if threat's the right word, but it's a negative connotation for both men and women, I think. And I'm actually not sure who started this, but when I was in dental school, they had something called gunner bingo. And it was not a good thing to have your name. I mean, a gunner was a person who would run over anybody to get their grades, So I was in a corner square on gunner bingo, like that I was a gunner, right? And that was not a good thing. I mean, that's, I definitely went through dental school kind of feeling a little, some of my classmates may be on here, but this is my experience. Remember I talked about, I know I'm creating it. So everything I say, I realize now that I was creating it. At the time, I might have felt a little bit like a victim, but now I know I was creating it. But it was not a good feeling to know that that you were called a gunner, and that people had the experience of you that you would run over anybody to get what you wanted, which was good grades, because I thought I wanted to be an oral surgeon. Which I ended up deciding not to. I had a child in dental school, and I also realized through spending many, many hours with oral surgeons that most of them did things all day long that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do jaw surgery.
Right.
Yeah. And I didn't want to pull wisdom teeth, extract wisdom teeth all day or extract teeth all day.
Yeah,
Back then there weren't.
Taking wisdies out. Yeah, taking wisdies out.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of, there wasn't all this cool stuff going on that's going on now. And I didn't know back then that I could, Dr. Gunson in Santa Barbara pretty much just does facial reconstruction. I didn't know back then when I was in dental school that I could choose and do whatever I wanted.
Right.
I thought I had to do what all the oral surgeons that I was visiting was doing, which was pulling, and I didn't want to pull teeth. So anyway, so somewhere in my 3rd and 4th year, I settled down, but I still graduated very high in my class. And a lot of people, I didn't make a lot of friends in that,
because you were a gunner.
Because I was a gunner.
Yeah.
And my husband, one time we were on the elevator, and I guess somebody said something about it on the elevator with him on there. And he said, "If you're not a gunner, what are you?"
Yeah.
Because you're a slacker.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not trying your best, then what are you doing? You're not,
I don't know that I would be inclined to say something like that in an elevator.
I know, he did. He did. He defended me. So.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about what you're saying, and I realize where this is going. I obviously am not being negative or critical at all about any of these people that I've met. They're brilliant. They're staggering in my life. I could never conceivably aspire to do anything that these people do. But each of them in their own way was incredible. But again, the threats, having time for family, this sort of thing. Did COVID adjust it? This, that, and the other. What I saw in all of this was I wasn't convinced that they knew how to reframe and recenter, because they really, by virtue of their reputations, by virtue of their their accomplishments, they were on a hamster wheel. Now, I don't mean it's a golden wheel, right? And they're using
Right.
diamonds. They're using diamonds where there need to be bearings, polished. I mean, really, you're talking about not only the creme de la creme, but they're superstars. And they're just missing the tattoos and the piercings, but they are superstars in every sense of the word, right? But what I never heard, except for a few, that's not fair. That obviously there's no such thing as never say never, and don't generalize and whatnot. But what I really never heard was that they actually stepped back for a moment and reframed and recentered. It's and no, it's the three R's, right? Reflect, reframe, recenter, right? That wasn't happening. And part of it was that you're blinded by, this is cool, Bruce Springsteen, you're blinded by science, right? On so many different levels. You have to aspire, you have to learn endlessly. Digital world is just ramping up. The generational change went from being 6 months or a year or whatever it is. We're now talking about days and weeks.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? In the midst of all this chaos, this hubbub, this endless cacophony of noise, how do you reframe, reflect, and recenter?
I love this because I wanted to get back to this when I said, let's go ahead and talk about the patients. This is what I wanted to come back to.
Okay.
So I'll tie it back in just real quick. We were talking about vision, and I said, it's a conscious decision. Your vision is a conscious decision about how you want to practice and how you want to be in the world. And I want to go back to that, and then I'm going to answer your question.
Sure.
Okay. The reflecting is the thing, I think, well, all three of them are important. So if we take a moment to reflect and slow down, if we think realizing the value of that is of huge importance, man, we just keep going and going and going. And most of the time, life's going to give us something that's going to wake us up, because you can actually choose to grow consciously and wake up consciously, or you're going to trip, you're going to fall down, you're going to lose your health, you're going to lose your marriage, you're going to lose, some like cats in the cradle, your kid's going to come in one day and not know who you are, whatever, like something's going to happen that's going to be a wake up call.
Yeah.
So my feeling, and the top regrets of the dying, if you look through those, my feeling is like, why not do it now before we're dying? Why not do it now before the pain comes,
Yeah.
So if we don't do it, that's okay. We'll get a wake up call, and we'll hopefully listen that time. And if we don't, we'll get another one. Mine were always felt like these giant 2x4s hitting me over the
Right.
head. But to stop and to ask yourself who you want to be and how you want to show up in the world, no matter what's going on around you, to me is the most powerful. It's like in the core of who I am. Who do I want to be? If I have a choice of who I want to be, and I don't have to react to my old programming, which is so much of what's running us and so much of what we're so unconscious of, that it gets us to a place where we look back and say, oh man, I wish I would have done something differently, So that to me is the reflection, is stopping and dig. This is why I love coaching. I'm always being coached.
Right.
Because having somebody else help me go inside and keep looking and keep discovering and keep going another layer in, helps me know more, helps me be more aligned with my true purpose and my true reason for being here, and the as true as I can get way that I am supposed to be on this planet. Like, it feels the most congruent and authentic to who I am. If I can reflect and figure out what that is, and when I say figure out, that's the wrong word to use because that means I'm in my head, but know what that is and start practicing it. So do you want to ask a question? Because I can come back to what I'm saying.
No, not at all. I'm just, first of all, I'm smiling because you're preaching to the choir. Been there, done that, and definitely been walking that road for far too long. But
Yeah.
no, what you're saying, for people who, I mean, I'm not presuming anything, but you are defining self-care, compassion, and being kind to yourself. The ability to say no is
Yeah.
probably one of the most powerful terms and the most powerful things that you can do in this world. Just say no. And I'm not talking about a Nike commercial or whatever the hell it is. It's, yeah, just, you're talking about self-care and compassion. And so many people don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Just,
This is like self-care at the highest level. This is like care of your soul.
yes,
You
yes,
know, this is not just care of your body, care of your mind. It's care of your mind too, but it's just like care of your soul. Like, I'm here for a reason. It's
yeah,
worth it for me to slow down and find out what that reason is, find out who I'm here to be, and then shine my light.
yeah,
Like, be that. So the way to do that, when we figure out what that
yes,
is to then, so we've got this subconscious programming on one hand, and we've got this new intentionality for how we want to be.
yeah,
But this is where I think the reframing and recentering comes in.
yes, yes,
Is so we've reflected, we've chosen, you know, it's almost like a philosophy statement or something. Like, I have this list of statements of who I am no matter what, my declarations of who I am. And because my mind has other ideas about who I am that have been well grooved, you know, into my neural pathways, and I have many behaviors and proofs and evidence that those are true because
yes,
they've been living themselves out. I have to, now I'm re-entraining my brain to these new neural pathways. So I am constantly listening to those on an audio, reading them to myself. Um, one of them is, I am light, love, and life bubbling forth and expressing itself. So like, it's something like that. Or there's something about my husband, about how I show up in my marriage, how I show up with other people. I am love in action, emanating and spreading love. So that one, let's use that one as an example. So in an instant where I'm in a situation where I might not be so loving, if I'm constantly centering myself and bringing myself back to the truth of who I am, which I'm doing intentionally during the day, when there's a moment of choice, you know, my neural pathway would have literally, we're run by our subconscious programming 95% of the time. That's the average human being. So 95% of the time, my neural pathways would take me to whatever my old way of behaving would be. Let's say I've got some behavior with my husband that's not very loving.
yes,
And the more I teach my brain and reframe and retrain and recenter to the truth, this new, I'm calling it the truth. It's your new chosen reality. It's who you choose to be. It's how you want to show up in the world. The more I bring myself back to that, the more in those moments when I have those choices to make, I'm going to start to make those choices. And also, we actively choose to make those choices, even when it's uncomfortable. Like, if it feels uncomfortable, it's because it's not what you've been doing for 20, 30, 40 years.
right,
So to me, that's reflecting. Recentering is, to me, in the moment, that takes a little bit of consciousness, because it means you're bringing yourself present and aware, you know, taking some breaths, realizing it's really being tuned into yourself enough to realize when you're off center. And I think a lot of people don't know where center is because we're so used to being in that striving driven state that feels normal to us. We actually, I mean, that's why I think people meditate too, is because they get to feel what it's like to be in that still space, in that still place.
right, right.
You know, and be connected to, it's not that your thoughts aren't still there, but you're not being driven by them. They're not running the show.
You just did something I thought was very intriguing. Typically you don't see. You were watching my face when you were talking, and your comment was, do you want to ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So your radar is such that, given how you function, your mindfulness, you're picking up facial cues through a computer from somebody you really don't know. For all you know, I had to scratch an itch and my face looked funny, right? but you picked up on it, which in and of itself is probably, I think it's consistent with everything that has been discussed the last 3 days. We have to know ourselves, and we do get to know ourselves, but you really never get to know
Yeah.
anybody else. But you have to engage in the world. So theoretically, if you're going to engage and you engage well, and you're going to be welcoming, and the universe is going to come to you, and people will gravitate to you, you really need to have antenna, and those
Yeah.
radar antenna need to be such that you are picking up on everything under the sun. Somebody who does this when they're talking to you. What does that mean? Now, I'm not talking about being overly intuitive or overly insightful, but we are interacting with the world at all times.
Yes.
And as dentists, more so, because we're dealing with what is essentially an abnormal situation. So,
And I love that you said that, because then we have the opportunity. We then have, this is where the gap is. So I see you do a motion with your body, and I have an opportunity to ask a question, or I have an opportunity to make up a story about it, or I have an opportunity to make it mean nothing and say nothing,
right.
And so I chose to ask a question.
Yeah.
But I could have made up a story. Oh, he's bored, or
Exactly.
which is That's so often what we do. We just make up a little story. We don't even realize we did it.
Okay.
Ken doesn't care. Whatever it could be. I don't know what I would say to that.
No.
But and then next time
and whatever pop out to the floor.
Yeah, and then next time I interact with you, I've got this little story going that's like, I wonder if he's going to do that again. If he's going to,
There you go.
There
you go.
And so, yeah, reframing in the moment. I think that's being conscious. It's a combination of being conscious, and it's a combination of how much work we've done to reprogram our subconscious mind. Sure.
I'm sneezing on.
Yeah, what does that mean?
I'm sneezing on the truth. That's what it means. Holy.
Yeah. So then, if we've retrained our subconscious mind, we're a lot more likely to make up stories that we actually want instead of making up stories. Because you know what? Ultimately, I have a coach, and I love this, and it freaks me out at the same time. I've been a seeker of truth my whole life, like a seeker of the truth.
Yes.
The truth, with a capital T. He says he doesn't create based on truth. He creates based on what he wants to experience. He chooses his ideas and his thoughts based on what he wants to experience, not on truth. And the reason is because the truth is what we've already created. So it's what's already happened. So it's not, does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
We have a choice in the moment to create something totally different that we've never experienced before, that doesn't come out of our previous ideas at all.
We're trained to be rote. It's, as I said, that's the natural point of a dentist. You're trained to be individual, you're trained to be linear. If you're writing papers, there are statistical analyses that are done, there are protocols that need to be followed. Writing an investigation is, I was looking at doing something with regard to analyzing, it's raining outside, so I just wanted you to feel comfortable. It's like a tropical rainfall. So I just went, God. I mean, again, the threads that were there, the lecturing, the keynotes, the preparation, the digital, everything had, I don't know how to put this without sounding crass or critical. Everything that we do wasn't about our truth. Were you really happy doing this, or did you have to do it because this was consistent with the new method? There were some people that came back and said, well, I get exocad and digital and whatever, but I still like the natural, because it's like listening to music. Would you rather listen to a vinyl record or something that's been digitally done, right? The beauty of vinyl is there's a mistake. You can hear the mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're not the scratching, but you can hear the mistake, which you don't hear in digital because it's auto-tuned. So my question is, and I guess in that context, is the digital world of dentistry going to make us better because we can eliminate mistakes? They can always tweak an algorithm. Or did what we do before in the quote-unquote analog era, was it really so bad? You were an artist, So I'm gonna ask you. See, the whole point of all this is great, because I get psychotherapy for an hour, and I don't have to pay $150. This is cool. It's like the doctor is in, and okay, cool. I'm here. I have an appointment. So here are the things that I think in looking this up, because I knew you were going to be here, that I think are endemic to so many dentists, just by virtue of what dentistry does to us. So the first question, and we'll keep them short, just because I don't want to there are people listening going, I'm not like that. So we'll just kind of we'll accept the fact that, whatever. Catastrophizing, okay? Dentists catastrophize. That's a very big part of the practice of dentistry. It's part of the imposter phenomenon. It's part of the fact that we are subject to the whim, as we say here in Ontario, if you have a $1 stamp, an envelope, and a pencil, you can get in trouble at your college, right? You just have to say, he was a creep, and they got to investigate you, right? So catastrophizing. Tell me about how to avoid catastrophizing.
Well, first, let me say that I think catastrophizing, and probably your whole list, I can't remember all the other words, but most of the time.
I'm going to only pick 5. I don't want to overburden.
Okay, most of the time when we're doing these things, it might be the same answer for all of them. They're protective mechanisms. So in some way, our mind thinks that if we catastrophize, we're preemptively going to know what could happen, and we're going to prepare ourselves for that.
Okay.
So in some ways, it's a learned behavior that comes from that.
So it's like jumping to conclusions. So that there's a number of these. I'm just looking at what you said. You're right. Catastrophizing and jumping to conclusions are essentially the same thing.
Jumping to conclusions could be more like let's say growing up, my mom I had a little bit of a trauma response to things, and I project into my reality now that every time those things happen, it means it's a threat to me.
Right.
Jumping to conclusions could also, to me, that feels a little bit like that. Like, oh, when he does that, that means that. But it's all over here in me. Jumping to conclusions. It's going to be all the same. They're protective mechanisms or learned behaviors that are just playing out in our dental practices.
You're scaring me because I've been down that road. Shoulds, because that relates to everything that we've been discussing. The shoulds are the drive, the perfectionism, and the shoulds.
If we go back to let me just show you this. Can you see this diagram of a diamond?
Yes, of course.
There's a diamond, and then there's this scriggly stuff around the outside.
Right.
And then there's a little line around that. Sorry, I know there's writing.
No worries. Oh, wait.
Diamond.
Wait, I have to change something. Sorry. We're into another phase of our discussion.
Oh, okay.
I had to shift the background. Okay.
I love this one.
I'm listening.
The diamond. Okay, so let's talk about shoulds, catastrophizing, all of it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know this is a concept, but if you can just hang with me here.
Sure.
Every experience we're having is created from an idea or a thought or a belief that we have.
Good.
So when you say catastrophizing or jumping to conclusion or shoulding, there's an idea in our mind that feels true or real to us, right? So we have the thought. So what's the thought that would lead to catastrophizing? Or a should is easy because you can say, my staff member should make the schedule full, or she shouldn't answer the phone like that, or she should do this, or he should do that, or I should, right? Should's an interesting one because, so like one of my core beliefs or one of my core ideas that I'm retraining my brain is that nothing should be anything different than the way that it is.
Right.
And I joke with my clients when somebody will say something like, well, my husband should pay more attention to me or whatever, well, I'll say something like, well, how I know that he shouldn't? And she'll say, how? And because he doesn't. Like what's actually happening is what should be happening. But we're putting the label and the judgment on top of it as if what's happening is wrong. So it's a thought or an idea that's creating that reality. So if we can just back up, as soon as we feel the experience of catastrophizing, or we feel we're not going to experience catastrophizing. We're going to experience there's a catastrophe.
Right.
Or we're going to experience being upset with a person because they're not showing up the way we wanted them to be, show up. And what was the middle one?
Well, it's funny because you were quite right. There's only one of these that actually isn't related. So I'm just going to very quickly, because you've answered the question for all. Catastrophizing, overgeneralization, emotional reasoning, what was the other one I wrote down there? Shoulds, global labeling, they're all the same thing, right?
Yeah.
We have a preconceived set of notions, whether it's our patient, whether it's our peer group, it's whether we want to, or how we want to present ourselves, it's relative to the amount of research we want to do because it gives us accreditation. But you're right, they are all, there's a consistency through it. And that
it's a programmed, generally it's programmed idea of what we think is reality. And so we're putting that label on it, we're putting that idea on it, and then we're creating that experience for ourselves. Oh, this is a catastrophe. Oop, now I'm gonna experience that because I said so.
How do you transition? So here's the question. Everything's a journey. This isn't going to change overnight.
Oh,
but
yeah.
What's the most effective way of transitioning out of that mindset?
Well, it's exactly what you said earlier, the reflect,
Right.
reframe, and recenter thing. For me, it's ahead of time deciding how you want to show up and what you actually want your mind to be programmed for.
Okay.
If you could just pretend like you were going back to day one and you had this open canvas of a mind, and it, it's going to get programmed with something, but you could put whatever you wanted in there that would have you then show up however you wanted. How would that be? That's your vision, basically. And then when you have that moment where you're experiencing a catastrophe or a staff member that's pissing you off, whatever it is, there's something going on there. It doesn't feel good in your body. It might feel good from the sense of, like, some of us get a little adrenaline rush from feeling powerful when we resist things, or we feel, whatever that is. That's not really good for our body, though.
No.
But I used to kind of get a little power trip on that kind of stuff. But if we notice in our body what's happening and the chemical, like what we're feeling, and it doesn't actually feel good and it's not what we actually want to experience, we can stop right then, take a few deep breaths, choose something different. But it really, in every moment, comes back to, okay, I'm creating this.
Yes.
Like, to me, it's the realization, I'm creating this. What thought did I have? What am I feeling, and where's it coming from? And sometimes we have to take a step away. Sometimes we don't. Most of the time, we don't realize it till later. It doesn't happen when we're in the moment. But the more tuned in we get to what's going on in our bodies, the more clear we get about the fact that we're creating that, and the more we're reprogramming our subconscious mind, the easier it is in those moments to slow down, choose something different. Does that make sense?
Totally. And
okay.
It's I think the heart. We're all. I think this is typical of dentists because, again, this is typical of a perfectionist. All of these things are, it's black and white. The implant fits or it falls out in a week. The veneer cracks a week after you put it in. It was the lab's fault, or the occlusion was up. But that's sort of the next phase, and that was sort of the last thing I wanted to bring up. And again, it's very hard not to sound judgmental and you're going through all these things. You're unpeeling layers. We all have.
Yes.
We all do our job. We all approach our life or whatever in whatever context. As professionals, we can go off in so many different ways. But ultimately, you still are being driven by. You are being driven by all or nothing because that's the nature of the profession, but we don't need to see it that way, right?
Right.
The profession lays down the black and white, the all or nothing, but we as people don't need to see it that way. It's coming to us. We can see it in whatever context we wish. But the last part, at least from my perspective, and once again, it's my show. I can say anything I want. Something ridiculous like that, is the blame game. We are
Uh-huh.
seeing it more and more. Well, tragically, we're seeing it in America with respect to the people that could theoretically be doing more and more and more, but they're ascribing all of these failings to somebody else. But that's not uncommon, really. That's typical of a professional. For you to own the mistake is rough.
It
That's
is
a
rough.
tough thing for somebody who's perfectionistly driven, who is really trying to be at the top of their game, top of their peer group, to say, I screwed up. I made a mistake. I'm not suggesting that people don't do it. I just think that for a lot of people, it's the blame game. Not my fault. Nope, nope, nope. Your fault. The lab screwed up. If my assistant had only done this, if my grad student had only done this, if the collaborators on this article had gotten their act together and given me the information on time, it's the blame game. That's human nature.
It
But how do you
is.
shift out of that? How do you reframe, retrench, and recenter that?
Okay, I literally think we could have a whole nother call on this,
Sure,
but I'm gonna try to I'm gonna respond anyway.
sure.
Um, wow, because to me, I'll say over the last 5 years, I've done a lot of work on this, more so than before that. And the idea that I'm wrong, well, first of all, I told you one of my core beliefs is that there's something wrong with me. But
Yeah,
being wrong in my world was it wasn't okay. I think that comes from a lot of our childhood. Being wrong is sometimes it's wrong, like, wrong, and sometimes wrong gets turned into shame, like
yes,
I'm wrong, therefore I'm bad.
yes.
So that's how it lived for me. So I was unwilling to be wrong, because if I was wrong, I was bad. But on the opposite side of the coin is the fear. Really underneath it is that I think I might be, and I'm afraid of that. And so it's a defense mechanism, right? So it's constant. Um, so that's all running in my subconscious mind: the fear of being wrong and defending myself and blaming other people, or blaming myself. I mean, it does show up in both ways that
Right,
so what
right.
I've chosen and what I think is the most helpful perspective is to choose to see myself 100% responsible. Now, that is
That's right.
difficult.
Whoa.
It is, it's like, okay, where's my responsibility in this? Where's my power in this? That's how I really see it. Where's my responsibility? Not like a blame, not like a blame, not like I did something wrong. And in fact, I love that we're sort of ending with this, because you said it earlier, and I live with so much lightness and compassion for myself now. Like, nothing is ever wrong.
Right.
And I want to suggest to you and to anyone who's listening, um, I heard recently this beautiful spiritual message that basically said, in God's eyes, source's eyes, however you want to see it,
Right.
in the eyes of our
The
creator,
greater power, yes.
nothing is ever wrong. There's no judgment. There's the awareness, because our creator is aware that we were acting from a lower level of consciousness. So, like, we just didn't know what we didn't know. There's like a whole lot of grace for us coming from, the space of love and create however you see that.
Yes.
That was the message. And so I just want to suggest that we learn to give that to ourselves. And that's what I've learned to do, is just realize, me blaming myself for something that I did 6 months ago, I would have made a different decision if I had known better. Me blaming somebody doesn't mean I don't do it, because I do still sometimes, but I'm pretty good about not blaming. um, I can usually have grace and see that the human being in front of me was just doing, honestly, the best they
The
could in
best
the
they
moment.
could. The best
And
they
I have that for myself, and I have that for others. And I also choose to take responsibility and to say, where's my power in this? Where can I create a shift? What can I reframe? How can I see this differently? How can I show up differently? Who was I being that created this? What was I thinking that created this? How was I a part of this? I mean, I joke about coronavirus right before it showed up. I swear, I think gathered everybody and the people who are truly aware of it, if we all said, for the previous 6 months of coronavirus, was I having thoughts like wishing that I could slow down, wishing that I could take a break, wishing that the traveling would stop, wishing that I had more time with my family, wishing da 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 da.
Nope.
I mean, I was.
You were, because
you know, but I wonder, like, if even that, like, as crazy as it sounds, that's why I said this could be an hour, you know, this could be a whole nother call, the blame game.
Yeah.
Like, we can take the responsibility as high as we want to, but if it's I think the problem is that we've equated the word responsibility with blame or fault.
Yeah. You know,
that's the problem.
It's interesting that you said that, and I think what's intriguing is everybody's been talking about this, and this is how we're going to do lectures, and this is how we're going to do everything, but they've been saying it begrudgingly.
Yeah.
You know, and my attitude is, why? You've gotten off airplanes, which at the best of the time, you usually ended up with a cold after a while, or like some sort of, you know, bacterially resistant or antibiotic resistant infection. You were not being patted down or run through x-ray, whatever. And I'm not disputing traveling as being a bad thing. I think it's great if you're going on a holiday. But you know, that was my first thought. People are looking at this and saying, you know, it's not the same. I can't see people. And I'm going, so learn how to use it. Okay,
exactly.
you know.
Dance with it.
Dance with it, you know, like light one candle. Don't yell at the darkness, light a candle. Come on.
Yes, I love that.
Dance with this thing. I like that. That's pretty cool. Dance with this.
Yeah, a good question is, given what's happening, what would I love to create?
Yeah, take this to the next step. You know, they've got apps now that you can plug in your answers. So technology, they've already started fighting with Zoom. Zoom's already got like 12,000 competitors coming out of the work. And this one's going to do this, and this one's going to do this, and virtual studios. So why do you want to go back and get on the plane and get sick and jet lagged and tired? And all? You want to see your buddies? Great. Take a vacation with their family. But if you, again, be accepting, reframe, retrench, recenter, recalibrate, whatever you want. Put it here. You got to monitor. Fit into this. You know, learn how to sit right, learn how to talk right, learn how to engage. It's going to happen. You know, really, it's going to happen. It has to. Not because of COVID, but because of carbon footprints and costs. You know, like, yeah, the airplanes are more fuel efficient, but prices aren't coming down. You know, you can go to Expedia, that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna end this very quickly by saying the most important thing is further discussion is purposeful. We're going to do this. I promise you we're going to do this another time. First of all, I'm getting this for free. This is cool. I don't have to pay for the therapy. How bad can that be? But it's something that someone said to me when I was going through a lot of stress. And it's just, he said, man, just be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
It's basic is that. Be kind to yourself. Don't expect anybody else to do that.
Right.
Just within you, without you, in the immortal words of George Harrison, be kind to yourself.
Yes.
And I want to thank you for being kind to me and tolerating my inanity for the last hour and whatever it is.
There was no toleration necessary whatsoever. It was a joy.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. I wish I was in Costa Rica, because when it rains in Toronto, it just gets gray and ugly. Like, there's no joy here. There's no green. Nothing gets lush. You know, all you see is like buildings dripping. It's not very much fun. Allison, you are a delight, and this was a joy. And I honestly hope we can do it again. And if not, I don't know, come to Costa Rica or whatever and play with
absolutely.
You know, I always wanted to watch a praying mantis. I just wanted to share that with you. That was on my bucket list. I wanted to watch a praying mantis.
You're my friend on Facebook, so you'll see my videos later.
Oh, all right. Okay.
I think we're friends. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Much love. Take care.
Much love. Much love.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And be kind to yourself.
I will. You too.
Okay. All right, Mel. Thank you so much.